Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into a real classic,
Oh, yeah.
How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie.
Love it.
We've got excerpts straight from the book itself, and then we're also going to be looking at some of those stories, those personal anecdotes that Carnegie just loves to sprinkle throughout his writing.
It's what makes it so good.
It's what makes it so good.
So readable.
Yeah, and so relatable.
Yeah.
And I think this is one that's going to really resonate with you guys, especially if you're, business professionals trying to manage stress and boost well-being, at work and in your personal life.
It's amazing how relevant Carnegie's work still is.
Yeah.
It was written decades ago, but he was really tapping into these timeless human struggles.
Yeah.
And, they don't just disappear because we've got smartphones now.
Right, exactly. And for this deep dive, what we really want to do is make sure that we're pulling out the most actionable advice for you all. So get ready for some seriously practical strategies that can help you cultivate that unshakable resilience, even when things get hectic at work.
I think you'll be surprised, even if you've heard of some of these ideas before. Carnegie was such a master at, weaving these personal stories into his teachings, and I think it just makes it so much more impactful and memorable.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so let's dive into one of the first big ideas in the book, and that is this idea of living in day-tight compartments.
Okay.
It sounds kind of like a shipping term, right?
Yeah, it does.
But it's actually a really, really powerful mental model.
It is. The term was actually coined by Sir William Osler, and it really gets at the importance of focusing on the present moment.
Okay.
So think about it this way. You're sealing off each day, just like a watertight compartment on a ship.
Right.
So you're letting go of yesterday's regrets, and you're not letting those anxieties about tomorrow, seep it.
I love that analogy. So it's about being fully present in the now, which can be so tough in a busy work environment, right? You're constantly juggling deadlines and expectations.
Exactly.
It's so easy to get swept away by all of it.
Now think about how powerful this could be if you're facing a tough negotiation, for example.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of getting bogged down by, past deals that went sour or worrying about, what might happen if this one doesn't go your way.
Yeah.
You can approach it with a clear head and just totally focused on the interaction that's happening right now.
Totally. Now, Carnegie tells this story about a woman named Mrs. E.K. Shields.
Yeah.
She was a traveling book saleswoman, and she was going through some really, really difficult times financially and emotionally.
Yeah.
She was actually contemplating suicide. Can you imagine?
Wow.
It's heartbreaking.
It's a really heartbreaking situation, and it really highlights the power of this whole concept.
Yeah.
What Mrs. Shields did was just incredible. She adopted this day-tight compartments approach as a way to cope. She even started using the motto, "Every day is a new life."
Wow, talk about a powerful mindset shift. But how does someone in that situation even begin to make that change?
Yeah.
It seems almost impossible when you're in such a dark place.
Well, for her, it was about breaking things down.
Okay.
Instead of looking at her situation as this just massive, insurmountable problem,
Right.
she focused on just getting through each day. She found strength in focusing on what she could control in that moment rather than, being overwhelmed by the weight of everything that had happened or the uncertainty of the future.
That's a great takeaway for anyone feeling overwhelmed at work. Sometimes we get so caught up in the big picture, the huge to-do list, that we forget to just break things down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. And, this day-tight compartments idea aligns so well with, that modern concept of mindfulness.
Oh, yeah?
It's about just being fully present in each task, each meeting, each interaction. And, for busy professionals, that can be a real game changer when it comes to managing stress and improving productivity.
Yeah. It's like creating little pockets of calm amidst the chaos, right?
Mhm.
I know we've all felt that pressure of having a million things demanding our attention at once.
Absolutely. And instead of getting swept away by that current, you can use this technique to just stay grounded and focused. It's like you're intentionally choosing which compartment to step into, dealing with that one thing fully, and then you can move on to the next.
All right, so we've got day-tight compartments as one strategy for managing that overwhelm.
Yeah.
Now, Carnegie also talks about this kind of counterintuitive idea of actually facing your fears head on,
Yes.
right?
He does. It's about confronting that worst case scenario, and it can actually be very liberating.
Okay.
Carnegie outlines this 3-step formula for this.
Oh, I love a good formula. Break it down for us. What's step one?
All right. So first, you have to clearly identify the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen in a given situation.
Okay.
Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Really get specific about the worst possible outcome.
Okay. I can see how that might make some people want to like run for the hills.
Yeah.
But there's more to it, right? It's not just about dwelling on the negative.
Right. Step 2 is where the magic happens.
Okay.
You have to mentally accept that worst case scenario. Really let it sink in. This isn't about giving up or being defeatist. It's about acknowledging the reality of what could happen.
So it's like releasing that pressure valve instead of trying to avoid or deny the possibility of something bad happening. You're just acknowledging it head on.
Exactly. And by doing that, you free up so much mental energy that was, tied up in worry and anxiety. Carnegie shares this great story about Willis H. Carrier. He was this brilliant engineer who designed this like groundbreaking gas cleaning equipment.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember this one. Didn't it like malfunction or something?
It did. And he was looking at, a potential $20,000 loss for his company.
Wow.
Which was a huge sum back then. But instead of panicking, he actually applied this formula.
Yeah.
He accepted that the worst case scenario was, losing all that money.
Yeah. So he basically went, okay, if I lose it all what? Now?
Exactly. And by accepting that worst case scenario, he was able to approach the problem with a much clearer head. He was able to think creatively, come up with solutions, and ultimately he actually turned that potential loss into a profit.
That's amazing.
It is.
It's like once you remove the emotional charge from the situation, you can start to see the problem more objectively and find ways to work around it.
I think that's a key takeaway for business professionals.
Yeah.
We often face these high-stakes decisions where the fear of failure can be just paralyzing. But if we can step back, analyze those potential risks, and mentally prepare for those worst-case scenarios, we can actually become more confident and decisive in our actions.
It's like that old saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But in this case, you're not just preparing for the worst, you're actually mentally embracing it, which is like a whole other level of resilience.
It is, yeah. It's a powerful way to kind of reframe your thinking. Carnegie also gives another great example of this technique in action with a story about a New York oil dealer.
Oh, yeah.
Who was being blackmailed.
Oh, wow. Blackmail.
Yeah, like a whole other level.
Yeah, that's intense.
It is. And, this guy was understandably terrified. But once he actually sat down and really thought about the worst possible outcome, which in his case was, complete ruin of his business,
right,
he was actually able to take a step back and approach the situation more strategically.
So instead of just panicking and giving into the blackmailer's demands, he was able to think clearly.
Exactly. He consulted his attorney, and together they came up with this plan to handle the situation, legally and ethically.
Okay.
And this is where that acceptance of the worst case scenario becomes so crucial.
Right.
It allows you to access that clear-headed problem-solving part of your brain rather than being ruled by, fear and anxiety.
That's such a great example of how these principles can apply to real-world high-pressure situations.
Yeah.
It's not just about feeling better. It's about actually making better decisions.
Absolutely. And this ties into another one of Carnegie's big ideas, the importance of taking action. He talks about how keeping busy can actually be a powerful antidote to worry.
That sounds almost too simple.
I know.
Just distract yourself and you'll feel better. But I'm guessing there's more to it than that.
The key here is that it's not just about any kind of busyness.
Okay.
It's about engaging in productive activities.
Right.
Remember that principle we talked about earlier? The mind can only really focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
So when you're fully immersed in meaningful work, you're essentially crowding out those, worry-inducing thoughts.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I remember Carnegie shares this really moving story about a man named Marion J. Douglas.
Oh, yeah.
Who lost 2 of his daughters in a tragic accident.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking story, and it really illustrates the power of action in the face of grief.
Yeah.
Douglas was completely consumed by his sorrow. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He couldn't find any peace, but then his young son asked him to build him a toy boat. And that was a turning point for him.
Wow.
Engaging in that task, focusing on those little details of building the boat, it gave him a sense of purpose and just, a much needed break from that just overwhelming grief. And, it sparked something in him. He realized the power of keeping his mind occupied. So he created this list of 242 household tasks, things that, needed fixing or attention. And he threw himself into those tasks and effectively managed his grief by just, channeling his energy into productive action.
Wow, 242 tasks. That's incredible.
It's amazing.
But it also makes me think about how easy it is to get bogged down in busy work at the office.
Yeah, for sure.
Things that don't necessarily contribute to our goals or well-being.
That's a great point. And this is where that idea of flow state comes in. You know, that feeling when you're like so engrossed in a task that you completely lose track of time.
Yeah.
That's flow. And it's not just about like mindless busyness. It's about finding those activities that really challenge you, that engage your skills and talents, and that give you a sense of accomplishment.
So it's about aligning your actions with your values and your goals. It's not just about keeping busy for the sake of being busy, but about intentionally choosing those tasks that actually move you forward in a meaningful way.
Exactly. And, you know, in the workplace, this could mean anything from like tackling a complex project that you're passionate about to mentoring a colleague, or simply dedicating, you know, focused time to developing a new skill that's going to benefit your career.
Right. It's about being proactive, taking ownership of your work, and finding those pockets of flow that energize you and just boost your productivity. Now, shifting gears a bit, Carnegie also talks a lot about the importance of gratitude and perspective.
He does.
Right.
And he uses this great analogy of sawing sawdust.
Sawing sawdust. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It refers to that human tendency we all have to dwell on past mistakes, you know, to keep replaying those moments we wish we'd handled differently. But as Carnegie points out, it's futile. You know, we can't change the past. All that dwelling does is create more negativity and prevent us from moving forward.
It's like trying to saw through something that's already been cut.
Exactly.
Right, you're just expending all this energy and getting absolutely nowhere.
Exactly. And, you know, in a fast-paced business environment, it's especially easy to fall into that trap. Maybe a deal fell through, you know, a presentation didn't go as planned, or you made a decision you now regret. It's natural to feel disappointed or frustrated.
Yeah, for sure.
But we can't let those setbacks define us.
Right.
And that's where gratitude comes in. Carnegie tells this great story about John Palmer, a successful business owner who had become, in his own words, an old grouch.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was constantly focused on, you know, what was going wrong, what he lacked, and, you know, it was affecting his relationships and just his overall well-being.
Sounds like he needed a serious attitude adjustment.
He did, and it came from a surprising source, a young employee, a disabled veteran.
Oh, wow.
Who reminded Palmer to be grateful for what he had.
Okay.
You know, this employee, despite facing immense personal challenges, just maintained this positive outlook.
Wow.
And it really put things into perspective for Palmer.
That's a powerful reminder for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
To count our blessings, to focus on the positive aspects of our lives, both professionally and personally. It's so easy to get caught up in that daily grind, to focus on what's missing. But taking that time to acknowledge what we do have can completely shift our outlook.
It can, and that shift in perspective can make a world of difference in how we approach those challenges and setbacks. You know, it allows us to learn from our mistakes without being weighed down by them.
So instead of sawing sawdust, we're looking for the lessons, the opportunities for growth, even in those moments where we might feel like, you know, we messed up.
Exactly. And that's such a valuable skill for business professionals. You know, we're constantly being challenged to adapt, to learn to bounce back from those setbacks.
Speaking of bouncing back, Carnegie also talks about the danger of majoring in minor things, right?
Yeah.
Like getting so caught up in the small stuff that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, he uses this hilarious example of the feud between Gilbert and Sullivan. You know, the dynamic duo behind those classic operas.
With Gilbert and Sullivan, the guys who wrote Pirates of Penzance.
Yep. Those guys, these like incredibly talented creatives actually ended their partnership over, believe it or not, a dispute about the cost of a carpet for their theater.
A carpet, seriously, all that talent, and they break up over interior design.
It seems ridiculous, right? But it goes to show how easy it is to just lose perspective, you know, even for the most brilliant minds. And how often do we see this play out in the business world, you know?
All the time.
We get bogged down in these like trivial matters, endless email chains, pointless meetings, and we completely lose sight of what actually moves the needle.
It's like we're so busy being busy that we forget to ask ourselves, is this even important?
Exactly. And this is where that prioritization piece comes in. You know, as business professionals, we're constantly bombarded with demands on our time and attention. The key is to like discern what truly matters.
Right.
You know, focus our energy on those high impact activities that align with our goals and delegate or eliminate those tasks that just drain our energy without providing, you know, significant returns.
So it's about being ruthless with our to-do lists, saying no to those things that don't really matter, and making sure we're spending our precious time on the things that actually move us forward.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about being efficient, it's also about protecting, our mental energy and well-being, because when we're constantly bogged down in those minutia, it's hard to be, our most creative, productive, or resilient selves.
Totally. It's like we're running on fumes just trying to keep up instead of operating from a place of clarity and purpose.
Exactly. Now, speaking of resilience, Carnegie also shares this inspiring story of Jack Dempsey, the legendary boxer.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
Well, after losing the heavyweight championship, he could have easily, spiraled into disappointment and bitterness. But instead, he chose a different path.
Okay.
He refused to dwell on his defeat and channeled his energy into new ventures, opening a restaurant, promoting fights, just staying active and engaged.
So he basically reinvented himself. He didn't let that one loss define him.
Exactly. And it's such a powerful example for anyone who's faced a setback in their career. Maybe you lost that big promotion, your project got shelved, or, your company went through a major restructuring. It's easy to feel defeated in those moments.
For sure.
But like Jack Dempsey, we have the power to choose how we respond to those setbacks.
That's right.
It's about focusing on what we can control, learning from our experiences, and just constantly seeking, new opportunities for growth. And, Dempsey actually said that he had a better time after losing the championship than during his reign as champion.
Wow. I love that. It really shows that sometimes our greatest growth comes from our biggest challenges.
It does, and it highlights the importance of adaptability and a growth mindset, especially in today's rapidly changing business landscape. Things are constantly evolving, and we need to be able to pivot, learn new skills, and embrace new ways of thinking.
It's not about clinging to the past or fearing the future. It's about being present, being open to new possibilities, and constantly striving to be the best version of ourselves, both personally and professionally.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, it's clear that his wisdom is just as relevant today as it was, decades ago. These strategies, though seemingly simple, offer incredibly powerful tools for managing stress, building resilience, and ultimately leading more fulfilling and productive lives.
And the key takeaway here is that these aren't just, abstract ideas. They're actionable steps we can take to create real change in our lives, both in and out of the workplace.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or simply looking for ways to boost your well-being and performance, I encourage you to revisit Carnegie's work. You'll find a treasure trove of practical advice and inspiring stories within its pages.
And remember, it all starts with that choice, that decision to take control of your thoughts and actions. So as you go back to, your busy week, ask yourself, what's one small step I can take today to implement one of these principles in my own life?
Maybe it's setting aside 5 minutes for a mindful breathing exercise, identifying a task that brings you into that flow state, or simply expressing gratitude for the things you have.
Whatever it is, take that step, start small, be consistent, and watch as these seemingly small changes, begin to create a ripple effect in your life, leading to greater peace, purpose, and productivity.
And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Just pick one thing, focus on that, and build from there.
Exactly. And if you're looking for more support or inspiration, well, where to find us. We're always here to guide you on your journey of growth and discovery.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep striving to live your best life.